Hi everyone, I hope you're well. In today's video, I'm going to do something a little bit different. I'm going to be shooting a wedding with my first ever DSLR. That's my 15-year-old now Nikon D70. Now this is probably the one camera that I'll ever own that I would never actually sell. It means an awful lot to me because it's the camera that first got me into wedding photography and really set me on my way in terms of being a wedding photographer. So it really means a lot to me, this camera. But it's 15 years old, so it's not got any of the bells and whistles of the modern day cameras. So I just thought it'd be really interesting to see how it would compare to today's modern cameras. Because when this camera came out, it was absolutely state of the art, but 15 years is a long time in the technology world. So it's going to be exciting and interesting to see how it does compare to certainly like the most modern day cameras like my Sony A9. I should just say that I'm second shooting today's wedding. I would not use this camera now on a wedding that was mine and I was a sole shooter at. That would be a bit stupid. So a massive thank you to my friend and amazing photographer Neil Ridley for allowing me to come along on one of his weddings, and it's going to be a really good one, the wedding of Marcin and Chris, to see how this fares and how it holds up. It's going to be very different because this camera is only 6 megapixels, which is tiny in comparison to today's modern cameras. I mean, my phone I think is 8 megapixels, so 6 megapixels is virtually nothing. It only has a maximum ISO of 1600, and as I remember, or if I can remember correctly, that 1600 is almost unusable as well. So it may be that I can't actually go higher than 800 in terms of ISO. But I think the biggest problem I'm going to find, apart from the fact as well, reviewing him is going to be very difficult because the screen is absolutely tiny on the back. But I think the biggest problem I'm going to find is that I can't use back button focusing. So I'm so used to these days to using back button focus, where I basically press here to focus and press the shutter button to take a photo. So I might struggle with that, and I think it's going to get a bit of getting used to go back to the half press, full press. So I'm just really interested to see how it does compare to my modern cameras. So I'm going to take you along with me and we'll see how we get on. So just a couple of things to say about the video. All the photographs which you see, except for a short slideshow at the end, were taken on the Nikon D70. And all the video clips were taken from a camera which I had mounted onto the D70 so that you can see a camera's eye view of what it was I was shooting. I used two lenses on the D70 at this wedding, my 24mm and 35mm 1.8 lenses. But bear in mind that the Nikon D70 is a crop sensor camera, and as my lenses were full frame lenses, the focal lengths were actually more like 38mm and 56mm. Hi, so a little quick update. We've just left the groom prep now, and using the D70 is so much harder than I thought it was going to be. For a start, the biggest thing is there's only 5 focus points on the back. I got so used to using I don't know how many focus points, but only having 5 is really limiting. Plus also, I'm also clearly used, probably thanks to Sony, to firing off bursts of shots when there's a moment going on, and the Nikon, it's like I can take a shot and then another one, and it is really, really difficult to use. But I'm going to keep on with it and see how we go. But I do have my Sony here just in case it really gets too difficult and I decide that it's just not fair on the two grooms for me to be using this. So I'll let you know how I get on later on. All the wedding guests met in a bar before travelling to the wedding venue on a bus. It was quite dark in here and the D70 really struggled to focus, plus the fact I knew that the images would be really noisy because I had to shoot at the maximum ISO of 1600. So to help the camera, I ended up staying near to the window so that I had more natural light to use. Hi, so I just want to give you a little quick update about how I've been getting on. It's been so much harder than I thought it would be. The DSLR which I'm using, the Nikon D70, is 15 years old, but honestly it feels double that compared to the technology that I'm used to now with my D810 and especially with the Sony A9. This camera feels like something from the dark ages. I mean, there's nothing new in this. This is not new information. It's hardly going to come as a surprise, I suppose, but the difference has just been absolutely massive, far bigger than I thought it would be. So just off the bat, the biggest differences that I've found with the D70 is that, firstly, there's no back button focus. So my muscle memory, because I've been using back button focus now for 5 or 6 years, is so ingrained in me to want to focus that way that pressing the shutter halfway then full press is becoming really difficult. Also, the D70 only has 5 focus points, and I realise now how used to having a full EVF worth of focus points I am, and I move that focus point around as I'm working. So just having 5 feels really restrictive. The other obvious thing is that I can only take 1 or maybe 2 shots every second or so, which is really painfully slow when compared to what I'm used to. Again, I'm comparing night with day. It's a silly comparison really, but it's just an interesting experiment, and it just makes me realize just how lucky we are as wedding photographers in 2019 to use the cameras that we do, because you would not believe the difference. I say, only if you're for documentary photographers like me in the most part, where we're trying to get moments, real moments as they happen, being able to only take 1 shot every second or so is really difficult. I realise how much used to I am now to shooting through a scene. So with the Sony A9, seeing something, locking your focus and then working your way through that scene, you can't do that on the D70 at all. So that's been really difficult. My maximum ISO as well is only 1600. That's really tricky. The other thing which I've found that has affected me a little bit is you can't change the ISO in the viewfinder. So I have to look at the top of the camera to change the ISO. Again, just a little thing, but it's just something that I hadn't really sort of thought about beforehand. So they've been the major differences, and those differences have really affected the way that I've been able to work. I know that I've missed moments, and it's been really frustrating that I've been seeing moments through the viewfinder and not being able to take them because I'm not able to take enough shots with the D70. Again, completely the opposite of what I'm used to with the A9. But at the end of the day, it's been fun and I'm really enjoying it. And I say, trust me, the difference is so big. We should really be grateful that we were able to use the technology now that we do. Photography isn't about the equipment we use, but it goes an awful long way when you're comparing a 15-year-old DSLR to an extremely modern Sony A9. The other thing just that I just wanted to mention is that this has been an incredible wedding day so far. Chris and Marcin are such a nice couple, and the love in the room have been incredible, and that's been really helpful for me because I've been able to see so many moments, and that's made it easier. If there weren't as many moments around, I would have found this even more of a struggle. So again, just a massive thank you to Chris and Marcin for inviting me, and also to Neil for allowing me to tag along with him as I'm carrying out this frankly ridiculous experiment. So I'm going to go back in now, see how I get on, and I will update you again with my progress later. Okay, so just come outside for another little update. We've now had the wedding breakfast and the speeches, and they were all amazing. But as before, it's now becoming even more apparent just how difficult it is to use this old 15-year-old DSLR, because as the light starts dropping, it's finding it really hard to focus, even though I can only focus in 5 focus points as it is, but it's even struggling to find those. And I'm trying to look on the back of my camera to see where I'm up to, but again, there's these little tiny things that you take for granted these days. For example, when I'm reviewing my images, I can only zoom in probably like about 30%, whereas again with my modern cameras, you can zoom in really close, and that lets you know if what you're getting is in focus or not. With this Nikon D70, you can only zoom in a tiny percent, so you don't really know like if you're hitting focus. So hopefully I am. By the time you're actually watching this, I'll know, and obviously I'll be putting pictures on the screen, so hopefully they're not as bad as I think. But yeah, it's becoming harder and harder to focus because the natural light is now dropping so much. Next up is going to be the first dance and the reception, so I'm going to be attempting to use off-camera flash now, which is something that I never did when I was using the D70 15 years ago, but we'll see how we get on. I say at the end of the day, it's all like an interesting experiment, but I'm going to try my best, and I will see you later to let you know how I get on. So just left the wedding now. that was really difficult. Before I started today, I was thinking that it would be quite a fun and interesting challenge to use this DSLR, and it was, but I really didn't envisage it being as difficult as it was to go back to using a camera like that. As I said earlier in the video, the main thing that comes across is just how lucky we are now to use cameras that have the technology in them that they do, because going back to using a camera which doesn't really have any of that technology, it's very old-fashioned now, makes the job of wedding photography so much more difficult, especially if you're like me and you're trying to take documentary images, trying to capture moments and emotion which happen so quickly in the blink of an eye. Having a camera which is not able to react as quick as you would like is really, really difficult. Having said that, I did enjoy using it again, but that was obviously in the knowledge that this was a one-off. I don't think I could shoot an entire wedding on that camera with any sort of confidence. Even though I was only second shooting today, I still felt as I can't switch off, like an obligation to try and work as well as I can and produce the best work that I can. So a lot of times I had my Sony A9 on this side of me, and I was using that a lot more than I was originally envisaging, just because it's so difficult when you're seeing moments happen through your viewfinder and you're not able to capture them because the camera isn't quick enough. That's one of the most frustrating things I think you can feel as a photographer. So I did swap quite often for my Sony because I just felt too much guilt that I was missing things, but I still got a good enough taste of what it would be like to use that. And I say, much as I love that camera, the overall feeling was that I won't do this again. It was a really interesting experiment, but the technology has moved on so far, and the thought of going back to that just seems crazy. So what I'm going to do now, obviously when I'm recording this, I've not long left the wedding, so I'm not sure what the images are going to look like. I'm hoping some of them are in focus, but what I'm going to do now is show a little slideshow of images from the D70. But before I do that, I'm first of all going to show images from the Sony A9, just so you get a comparison of a side-by-side of what the files look like from each of the cameras. But just before I show you those slideshows, I want to say again a huge thank you to Chris and Marcin. Congratulations to you both again. Your day was just amazing. I love being a part of it, so thank you again for inviting me. And also a massive thank you to my friend Neil, who didn't mind me tagging along and carrying out this crazy experiment. So I thank you to all three of you. So I hope you found the video useful. As I say, clearly I'm not giving you any crazy information here which is going to come as a surprise. Modern day cameras are ridiculously better than DSLRs were in 2005. So nothing new there, I'm sure, but yeah, if you needed confirmation of that fact and just how far technology has come, then hopefully this video will prove that to you. So thank you again for watching, and I will see you next time.